Hi everybody, it's Librarian Faith from the Mandel Public Library of West Palm Beach. And today, I'm going to teach you how to make your own custom stamp. Let's get started, shall we? You'll need a couple of things in order to do this project. Firstly, you'll need a stamp carver. Now this is a speedball stamp carver. When you unscrew the top, it comes out with all of the optional blades you can use. You can also use an X-Acto knife, but it's not nearly as precise. And last time I was at a craft store, this was about $10, so it's not a huge investment. You'll also need a carving medium. I am using a Speedy Carve rubber block. If you want to try something a little bit cheaper to start out with, you can actually use one of those pink erasers, and it'll work. It won't be fantastic to work with because it's a little bit grainy in consistency, but it's a cheap and easy option for people who just kind of want to dip their toes in the water to see what's what. You'll also need a pen or a drawing you've already done. If you already have a drawing that you like and you want to transfer it onto your carving block, you'll unwrap it and then lay it ink side down on your carving medium. Then you'll use some water or rubbing alcohol and spritz it a little bit, kind of like you're applying a temporary tattoo. This will transfer the ink to the ink pad. I'm going to be drawing it again myself because I drew it a little bit smaller than I'd like. We're doing a cute little ghost today for Halloween, and I want the image to be a little bit bigger on the stamp. That way it can take up the entire block. You also need a pair of scissors just to try to trim the paper to whatever size you want or to unwrap everything. Let's get started. A quick thank you to my dad for making this little carving placemat for me. It's just made out of corrugated aluminum, I believe is the correct term. Aluminum anyways. And it makes it a little bit easier so that you don't accidentally dig into your tabletop. Okay, but since I've decided to redraw my stamp design, I'm going to have this up front so that I have kind of a guide to how I want it to look, and just go ahead and draw with any ink pen. So as you can see, it's not an exact recreation, but that's fine. It still looks cute, and that was my main goal. We'll be doing a positive stamp for this one. So that means that anytime you see the blue ink, that's what we're not going to cut. And anytime you see the pink base, that's stuff that we will be cutting away. If we were to do the opposite, a negative stamp, we would only carve out along the blue line. That way when we stamped it, all of the pink would be covered in ink. But I like the way a positive stamp looks a little bit better. Okay, now I had the outline done. So now I'm going to add in these little dots you see. I thought it made them look a little bit more wispy and ethereal, but that might just me. I don't want to make your design too fine, at least to begin with. That'll require much more concentration and a much steadier hand, which you'll develop as you do more stamp carving, but for the moment, I would recommend trying to stick with fairly thick lines and easy to draw shapes. I think I'm happy with this design. What do y'all think? So now that we have our final picture, how we want it to appear when we stamp it, we can start carving. I'll be taking my stamp carving unit and getting out my blades. Now I want to start with a much thicker blade. This is a number 5 because I have a bunch of stamp to carve away right now. All of this pink needs to be carved down so that it won't show up when we finally stamp it. That means I need to be wise with my time and just go ahead and get it all out. Okay. Also, just to show you how you load these blades, you'll want to unscrew the very top, and you can see that there's 2 pieces in the bottom. So you'll want to line up the half moon of the blade with the half moon in between the 2 pieces, and then roll it back down so that it's nice and in place. And this lets you switch out all the other ones as needed. And then we'll start to carve. Now my preferred way to carve is to go ahead and kind of outline the outer edges. That way I can go a bit more crazy and I don't have to be as careful when I'm doing, say, this part versus this part. So I'm going to put a moderate amount of pressure on the blade and slowly scoop up the carving medium. Now, unfortunately, my blades are a little bit dull. I have had this kit since probably middle school, so they last a good amount of time. But it doesn't carve quite as smoothly as it used to all those decade ago. When you want to start a line, you'll push gently down in, and when you want to finish, you'll pull it back up slowly. That way you're not tearing the medium any. These blades are sharp. They're meant to carve up stuff. And stamp medium has the same consistency as fingers. The amount of pressure you push down on one of these blades will determine how wide the carving path is. If you push really hard, it'll go really deep down and you'll have a much wider than if you would have had a lighter hand. This is about good for the outer bit of our stamp. Now I'll want to switch to a finer blade so I can get in more detail. That is a number 5, so I'm going to go down to the 3. So you see what I did right there where it kind of booped into that line I'm trying to not carve away? That wasn't great. You want to be careful of that when you're carving. You want to make sure you preserve the integrity of that outer line so that it comes up nice and clean when it's time to stamp. Okay, now that I got some more of the detail in, I'm going to switch to my smallest blade, which is a number 1, just to get those really fine details in. Make sure the edges are nice and crisp and smooth. Also, take this opportunity and just kind of clean up my workspace a little bit. As you can see, there's a bunch of carving medium accumulating. Okie dokie. Well, let's get back to it. As you can probably tell, it takes much longer to carve away the rubber once you get down to the number 1 blade. That's why we want to use the bigger blades to cut out as much of it as we can in advance so that we can get it done in a relatively timely manner. Plus, it's just not necessary to use a super fine blade to dig out the outer parts of your stamp. Okay, we're just about done with this first pass through. I'm just going to clean up some of the edges over here from when I carved it out with the bigger. Okay, so I think that's a good first pass. So the next step is to get a stamp block and to test it out on a piece of paper, just to see how it comes out. We'll be right back. Now that we've finished carving, or at least our first draft of our carve, we can go ahead and check to see how it prints. Now, you can use just a regular ink pad if you'd like. However, I am feeling a little bit extra today, and I found some pretty gold ink up in our craft room upstairs, so we're going to use the pretty gold craft ink. It is block printing ink, and in order to use it, you'll want to take a little rolly pin like this and have it go back and forth. Not the most attractive looking thing in the world, alas, but now that we have it rolled out, I'm just going to go ahead and roll it over our stamp. Okay, I first tried to put it on the purple paper that you saw just a second ago, but it didn't show up very well, so I'm going to try it on pink this time. I'm going to roll out some of the ink again, roll it onto our stamp, and we'll pop it over to the other piece of paper and just press down evenly. Again, careful not to scrub it back and forth. We'll peel up from one side to the other. And this is our first attempt at the stamp. You can see it still needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but now we know where it needs to be cleaned up. So I'm going to make sure to get all of these taken care of around the outer edge and clean up the middle a little bit. So we'll set these off to the side as we finish up carving. Almost every stamp will require that you go back and touch up at the end. Sometimes it can be really hard to see with the pink and everything being the same color, so applying the ink really helps. And the picture and the initial stamp you did will give you a good guide on what needs to be fixed. Like this one big streak going up the side, that is this guy. So that's who I'll go ahead and carve out first. I'm using a number 3 blade for this. Okay, I think we're ready for round 2. Let's see how this stamp turns out now. Which will make your hand completely covered in the ink, but you want to make sure that there's no little extra bits of stamping medium on your stamp. Otherwise, that'll show up in the print as well. So once again, we're going to take our ink, roll it out, and then roll it onto the stamp. We're going to turn it over, put it on a clean piece of the paper, and press down. And let's see. There we go, nice and clean. So I went ahead and cleaned up the stamp a little bit more. It's just a matter of reapplying the ink and then carving out anywhere that the ink shows up on the paper that you don't want it to be. But I've decided to leave good enough alone. Now if you want to be super precise in your stamp, what you can do is use this blade. Just an edge or an X-Acto knife. That would work perfectly fine. To go around the outer part of it to cut away any excess carving medium that you don't want it to have, which I think I'll do a little bit. I did also go ahead and get a regular ink pad out from storage. Admittedly, I had never tried to use the print block ink before. It was a new experience, which I highly recommend all artists doing. Try out something new for the first time. Maybe you'll love it. Maybe you'll be like me and not care for it hardly at all. But it all varies, and you never know when you might find a new medium you absolutely adore. Now for extra stability, there is a acrylic block kit that you can purchase that you'll mount the stamps to. You'll just apply an adhesive to the back and then put that straight into the acrylic block or wood block or whatever it is. And it'll make it easier for you to stamp this later on. I'm not going to do that today because I didn't want to go ahead and spend that extra money on something that's not 100% necessary. But now that we've carved out around it, we can go ahead and take the ink again and just dab it onto our stamp. About like this. And we'll take our piece of paper and see what we have. Gently applying it, pressing down firmly, evenly, careful not to scrub, and then peeling it up. And there we go, that's our little ghosty guy. I think he's looking pretty adorable. You can see this extra line over here. That's where I smushed it against the paper a little bit as I was peeling it up. So that's not quite ideal. If I'd been a little bit more careful peeling it up, that wouldn't have happened. But it did, and I think it looks fine. You can also see where I got a little bit of ink on my thumb and left it on the paper. Again, if you want to cut out around the stamp, that's fine. Or if you want to just try it again, that would work too. A lot of folks will make their own custom stamp if they do scrapbooking or Christmas cards or if they go geocaching. It's really popular among those types of crowds. Other folks just like them because they add a special extra something to letters they send out. But I highly recommend stamp carving. It's a load of fun and you really get to be creative. Plus, I originally got into it because I was terrible at drawing when I was younger. And so I was able to just print out clip art that I liked and apply it onto the stamp, kind of like a temporary tattoo. And that left the ink, so I was able to just carve around it and make something really pretty that I didn't have to draw. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to tune in next month for another one, and check out our Live at Studio 411 that happens the first Thursday of each month. Until then, happy reading!